Well, let me give you my view of what happened January the 6th. And we're here. We saw what happened. It was a violent insurrection for the purpose of trying to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after a legitimately certified election from one administration to the next. That's what it was.
And you said Donald Trump's actions preceding the January 6th insurrection were a, quote, disgraceful dereliction of duty, and that he was practically and morally responsible, your words, for provoking the events of that day. How do you go from saying that to 2 weeks later saying you'd absolutely support Donald Trump if he's the Republican nominee in 2024?
Well, as the Republican leader of the Senate, it should not be a front-page headline that I will support the Republican nominee for president.
After you've said that about him, I think it's astonishing.
I think I have an obligation to support the nominee of my party.
I think that I have an obligation to put aside any moral qualms I have about the terrible things they say and do. And if people die, that's just a part of the puzzle. So look, Trump is gonna do what Trump is gonna do, and he can be judged accordingly. We should be able to have higher expectations on others. Mitch McConnell would have you believe that he's a different sort of Republican. He's not like Trump. He's more of an old school Republican was. He's a serious person. But when you are willing to apologize for and tolerate any terrible act, any terrible statement, you will still ahead of time say, I will support you no matter what. Then what is the difference? How are you actually better?
Polling in the Republican Party has shifted dramatically over the last 6 months. Maybe it's because of the January 6th committee, all the revelations that have come out, all the revelations that are coming, but there's blood in the water surrounding Donald Trump. And if you go back to say October 2020, it was something like 55% of the Republicans identified first with Donald Trump and the party second. And it was like 35% identified first as Republicans. That's now flipped. Now it's only about 35% that identify first as with Donald Trump. 55% identify first with the Republican Party. Republican leaders see this. They see Donald Trump still having a very committed base, but a base that is getting smaller. And for Mitch McConnell, for Mike Pence who wants to run for president, not having Donald Trump at the top of the party would be a godsend for them. And they finally see that they've got some political cover because of how people feel about Donald Trump to go ahead and distance themselves from the president.
For some time now, for some reason that no one can identify, Donald Trump has christened Mitch McConnell as the broken down old crow, which is, I believe, the literal last animal you would think of when looking on Mitch McConnell's face. But anyway, that's what he calls him. And Mitch McConnell has finally responded to that saying, it's my favorite bourbon. That's what he said on Tuesday evening in an interview with the Washington Examiner. He said, aren't we using Old Crow as my moniker now? It was Henry Clay's favorite bourbon. Clay represented Kentucky in the House and the Senate in the early to mid 1800s. And it is indeed an old bourbon. It wasn't one that I'm familiar with. It is Old Crow bourbon. You never know as a politician, David, what you will end up getting labeled by Donald Trump. If you ended up being called the Old Crow, would you consider that getting off lightly?
Well, if it came from Donald Trump, I would think it has nothing to do with bourbon. It may have something to do with some sort of cartoon character. I think of maybe like the old Elmer Fudd, and I think there was sort of a crow-like figure who had sort of a strange neck and sort of hunched over like Mitch McConnell. I think that's what Donald Trump is actually referring to. I don't think he knows the first thing about bourbon. And if that's his reference, then I would think, okay, a childhood cartoon from the 1960s or 70s, that would seem to sort of fit. I would say, okay, that's just Donald Trump. He's been watching a lot of TV through his life, and that's all he knows. And he sees me or Mitch McConnell, whatever it is, looking like a crow. Okay, It's a little pathetic, but whatever.
But it does make sense that for two reasons that might be the reference that Trump is making. One is that his references would come from 60 years ago, and two, that it would be a cartoon that he would be referencing there. But in any event, I just want to remind people of one thing. I did not launch into this so that we could just talk about like, oh, is he an old crow? Like, no, he's awful actually. Whether you identify him as a crow or a turtle or a shriveled up old human being, remember, he also liked being known as the Grim Reaper in a previous political era. So his thing there was, no, I am the person that is going to kill literally any effort by the government to help anyone who isn't a multi-millionaire. Doesn't matter what majority you get in the House or whatever, doesn't matter how any of these policies poll, it doesn't matter because we don't live in the government system that you might think that we do. I will kill it. And so he was labeled the Grim Reaper, and he was apparently quite happy about that at that time, David.